All right. Well, hello and welcome. My name is Megan Floyd. This is September 17th, 2023, and I have my case presentation ready for SWG640. So the case that I've chosen to present on is Sandra Santiago. She is a 20-year-old Latinx female coming from Puerto Rico. She is one of 7 kids. She recently broke up with her boyfriend, Eric. They've been dating since age 17. She is currently 20 years old. Her friend Maria recommended that Sandra phone in to safe haven shelters due to signs and symptoms of persistent physical abuse and domestic violence at the hands of Eric. This has resulted in bruising and other physical injuries. Per Sandra's report, she mentioned that this mostly happens after Eric has consumed substances, namely alcohol. He can become enraged, jealous, and he's both physically and emotionally abusive. She included descriptors such as slapping, punching, choking, pushing, use of weapons, verbal abuse, threats of violence, and threats of death. Threats of death is the precipitating event that happened at the time of this report. Sandra reports that Eric threatened her with a knife to kill her if she were to leave him. So Sandra's family history, she was the result of a teen pregnancy. Her mom was age 17 when she had Sandra. She comes from a long history of domestic violence, abuse, and neglect in her childhood home. Sandra reports that her mother often ignored them. She became involved with multiple different male partners that were violent to her mother, and violent to her siblings. Namely, Sandra reported that she brought a double-barrel shotgun in to kill her stepfather and mother in self-defense after suffering years of abuse. She was a victim of child sexual abuse at the hands of her stepbrother as well. As a result of this residual trauma, she turned to drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism. The drugs were unspecified, and she's been independent or a ward of the state since age 15. So her current family status, her family likes Eric. Based on her report, she reports that her family doesn't know about his violent side, and when she has tried to talk to them about it, her mom often shifts the blame back onto her, stating that she's not a good wife, she's not a good partner to Eric, that she is not grateful and not doing the best that she can. Other than the singular sister that Sandra phoned at the time of her intake at Safe Haven, her contact with her family seems pretty minimal in general. It seems like that they probably have a strained relationship due to the sustained trauma that they have. Sandra's report is that her family, especially her mom, often make her feel small and unloved. So this wasn't included in the original descriptor for this assignment. However, her strengths are something that are imperative to the 2 theories that I've selected, which are crisis theory and empowerment theory. So I did want to go over some of Sandra's strengths right here, and then we're going to circle back to them to sort of highlight how these 2 different theories will describe these strengths. So in general, Sandra's been sober from both drugs and alcohol for 3 years. She has the ability to seek help and make her needs known. She has coping skills such as writing. At the shelter, it's reported that she's writing a lot of extensive poetry. She has supportive friends, and one of her sisters she remains in contact with who seem to care about her well-being. She has the Safe Haven staff who have maintained in contact with her, are writing diligent notes and engaging her in a variety of different skills and groups. And Sandra seems to understand that she has to have help in order to exit this domestic violence situation. So for crisis theory, this is one of the first theories that I've selected to help Sandra. So the basic outline is this is a product of the 1940s, specifically 1944, from Eric Lindman. The key components include that this is a short-term intervention focused on engagement, assessment, resources, and treatment planning. So for Sandra, she's in the middle of a crisis situation. She is experiencing what we call the precipitating event, and she needs social work staff to act immediately in order to help pull her from the situation because she has immediate threats to her safety and well-being. There are 4 key principles here. So this is a time-limited intervention, maximum of 6 weeks. Engagement and assessment occur simultaneously. So we're building rapport as we're assessing this client. This is to meet we are meeting concrete emotional needs as we apply the crisis theory, and we must move quickly. So for Sandra's particular case, I'm applying the 7-stage model from Robert's 2005 study. This outlines very specific tasks for crisis management and intervention, creates very specific goals, and the social worker can use this as a guide. So at the very bottom, it starts here with conducting crisis and biopsychosocial assessment, moving up to 2, establishing that rapport and sort of assessing as we move along, progressing through different stages that involve experiencing emotions, generating and exploring alternatives, and then developing and formulating an action plan. This is where the crisis resolution, this is where the crisis resolves, and then step 7 is a follow-up plan and agreement. So some strengths for Sandra is that she is currently in a crisis situation that is affecting her health and safety, and she does need intervention immediately. She has a history of chronic stressors as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we can use this theory to sort of help channel her strengths that we listed earlier to help get her to a place of stability. Because a crisis is any sort of situation where an individual essentially feels like the rug is pulled out from underneath them, a destabilizing event that upsets their equilibrium. So we have a time-sensitive application underneath crisis theory to apply these skills to assure her success. In this case, she did discuss wanting to return her partner as she starts to feel more uncomfortable with her sense of being alone, citing that she needs more attention and affection that she often gets from men. This could be part of that initial shock and withdrawing as well. So as a social worker, we could circle back to this 7 stages right here, going to step number 4 here, exploring some of those feelings and emotions, and then work with the protocols that are in place to sort of address that. However, there are some limitations to using this theory as well. The frequency, intensity, and duration and onset of abuse are very chronic for Sandra. She's been experiencing abuse since she was born. She has not had the luxury of stability, unfortunately. The long-term solutions are also not included with crisis theory. So it's once again about 6 weeks maximum for stabilization. And then after that, she is on her own to sort of break the pattern that her family has set in front of her, to break out of marginalization, oppression, and things like that, which is a very difficult cycle to break without assistance. Her chronic stress has also led to a chronic system of fight or flight, which has affected other areas of her life. And it also fails to address some of those other persistent symptoms that she has in her intake report. It's reported that she is 5'2" and about 90 pounds, and she really wants to stay small and skinny, but that could be an area that could be addressed as well. Is it the result of low self-esteem, malnourishment, etc.? So looking at an additional theory that would be helpful for Sandra is empowerment theory. So there are 6 key principles for empowerment theory. The first is personal is political. So if anybody experiences marginalization, that means everybody could experience marginalization. Marginalization itself is systematic, systematic. So oppression is involved in multiple different systems. Personal and psychosocial transformation can lead to a system level change. So empowering individuals, which can then empower communities and then foster change. Empowerment can only occur when people are treated with dignity and respect. So this is a core value of the social work profession, where we know that individuals have a right to self-determination, should always be treated with dignity and respect to empower change. Empowerment theory also relies on a non-hierarchical model. So within this model, this means that the clinician and the client are at equal levels and they're collaborating with one another in order to make changes. And finally, empowerment can lead to social action and to multiple different changes. So on the infographic here, empowered people, empower communities, and then empower change. So we're looking at Gutierrez 1990 for empowerment theory, specifically when I look at Sandra's different case. So there are four main components for this model. For Sandra, we're looking at increasing her self-efficacy, developing, it says group consciousness, because this was a theory originally designed for small groups, but we can use it for an individual. But developing Sandra's sense of consciousness. We want to reduce her self-blame and then assume her personal responsibility to change. So we're helping her develop her sense of individual identity, separate from her abusers and separate from the patterns that she's existed in before. So some strengths for applying this theory is that it is client-centered and collaborative. So this could be the first time for Sandra that she's been included in these decisions rather than oppressed. There are multiple different interventions that can be applied. So we can use motivational interviewing, we can use goal setting, we can increase the skills. And then once again, we can look at the strengths that were listed earlier here and use them as a different lens. So instead of something, how are we going to stabilize this person, but we can use them to help her form her sense of identity as we apply empowerment theory. So staying strength focused and skill based. So it also allows for a multifaceted approach to these different issues that she's dealing with. Some limitations for using empowerment theory, however, are that it's dependent on dismantling power structures even in therapy. So the clinician, the experience of empowerment would be dependent upon the clinician being able to forfeit their ego for this service. Empowerment also is not an immediate remedy, whereas the crisis is quick. There is a structure to it. Sandra would have to commit to a longer term engagement in order to start to feel empowered. This might be discouraging at first, especially for somebody who's struggling with a life or death situation and requires crisis stabilization. So this, once again, empowerment theory will require both depth and breadth of services, which can also be expensive. Considering that she is a 20-year-old ward of the state, I wouldn't assume that she has a expansive income. The other thing too is that the guidelines are open, so it's not a plug and play type of intervention. There is a little bit of collaboration, some trial and error that has to take place. So once again, talking to the more extensive level of services that would be applied through an empowerment perspective. So overall, using my clinical judgment, for Sandra's case, I would use a crisis theory for the situation that she's in right now, possibly with some case management services later, focusing on building up her empowerment. But in the short term, crisis, second of all, empowerment. So thank you so much for attending this presentation today. I'm learning so much in this class, and here's my references. Thank you.